Welcome to In Real Life, Foster Care Unfiltered, where real foster families share their journeys, the challenges, joys, and life-changing impact of opening their hearts and homes. In each episode, we explore the experiences of foster parents and the difference they make, with insights and guidance from Children's Home Society of North Carolina. If you've ever wondered what it takes to foster, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to In Real Life, Foster Care Unfiltered. We have an amazing guest with us today, Miss Teresa, who's going to share a little bit with us about her foster care journey. Welcome, Teresa.
Hi, thank you, Shannon. How are you?
I'm doing well. I hope you are on this fine Friday afternoon.
I am.
Teresa, as we're kind of kicking off, if you want to just tell us a little bit about you, how long you've been fostering, and maybe in 2 words, how would you sum up your foster care journey thus far? 2 or 3 words.
I became licensed as a resource parent July 2023, so it's been a couple of years. It was a whirlwind. It was definitely an experience. I was very excited, and there was a lot to learn, and at times it felt a little overwhelming, but it was all good. It was all good. It was uncharted territory for me. So, but I guess if I had to summarize the experience, definitely a learning experience.
Uh-huh.
And very insightful. You know, I've had an interest in this for quite some time from my own personal journey within my own family. And it's still going. We're still going. I'm actually in the process going towards reunification right now. So I'm very excited about that. That's been my goal to help with that. So it's all going well.
Can't wait to dig into all of that.
Yep.
I guess to start with, so I understand you have kind of a unique connection to foster care that goes back to your own family of origin. Can you talk a bit about how discovering your dad's story influenced your decision to become a foster parent?
Yeah. So my father, it was an unspoken. So
Okay.
none of us knew. So I was about 25 years old. Long story short, I found a photo of a woman holding me as an infant, and I approached it with my mother. My father had passed already. So I approached it with my mother, and she had very nonchalantly said, "That is your father's foster mother." And so it was a pretty big turning point in my life because it was shocking,
I can
but at the
imagine.
same time, because it was unspoken, it was one of those things I had a million questions about. And so having learned that, and I've had very loving grandparents. So having learned that that was the case, I pretty much figured there was more obviously to his story. So my mom had mentioned to me that he carried this picture because that was a pivotal moment for him to be able to bring his first child to his foster mother. He had spent all of his childhood, almost all of his childhood, from the age of, I believe, 5 years old through the time he reunited with my grandfather at 17 or 18 with her. And he had maintained that relationship with her. It was a very close bond, including with his own parents, right? He
Yeah.
did, reunite with them as well. And learning that, it gave me a lot of insight into kind of that, like, how that generational sort of trauma unfolded through the years. And while I wasn't able to speak with him directly about it, I had enough insight from my mother, and what she learned from my father about that experience. And one of the key things he said was that as traumatic as my childhood was, I do remember feeling loved and I do remember feeling safe. And that's what that foster parent had brought to his life at a very important time.
Mm-hmm.
And from that point, I knew that I
Yeah.
was going to go in this direction. Yeah.
Oh, that's an amazing story, Teresa.
Yeah.
Oh, and I love the connection of an adulthood after he gave birth to you, wanting you to meet the person who had
Yeah.
sown so much into his life.
hmm Yeah. It was an incredible time. Just seeing a whole other side to him, and it brought honestly a lot of things together for us
Yeah.
because I could understand my own family dynamic better.
Yeah. Isn't
So
it
it
funny
was.
how that happens?
It is. It was all good stuff though,
Yeah.
and it set me off kind of
To the
on this
fostering journey.
path. Yeah. Exactly.
So, from that experience to you pulling the trigger to apply to be a foster parent back in 2023, what do you think made you make that leap?
So I had volunteered quite a bit
Okay.
with children in challenging situations. I used to do a lot of volunteer work in corporate. I used to work in corporate America. They give you opportunities to volunteer in all sorts of environments and with organizations. And I primarily worked with children preschool through first grade. And during that process, you pretty much, you understand how trauma shows up in the behavior, right? Like I was interested in social work. I was actually interested in art therapy, and I was taking courses on the side while I was working in, audit, very,
Right.
very, different sort of way. And so it was important to me to understand how to work with children and better acclimate myself with, how to meet kids where they are emotionally. And in a lot of ways, that helped me also understand maybe what my father had gone through in his life too. So, and because I had such a strong interest in that, a lot of those children I came to learn were in the care system in the state that I was living at the time. But I think those types of situations and that experience early on in my life actually helped me to shape the way I parent my own son and I
Mm-hmm.
parent the foster children, right? Like you become more empathetic and you become more patient, and especially when they're nonverbal, which was our first placement, right? They didn't speak much. So for me, it was as almost all of that experience kind of made its way,
Into your
forward and,
decision.
and it became useful. Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
amazing. So my understanding is your first placement after you receive your license. So you got a phone call or an email saying, "Hey, Teresa, you hit the goalpost. You're officially licensed in the state of North Carolina." But you received your first placement within a week of that
Yes, I did.
decision point. Can you take us back
Yeah.
to, as much as you can remember, what was that moment like? And what was that transition? What surprised you the most? What did you find most, I don't know, frustrating or confusing?
It was
Anything that comes to
surreal.
mind.
It
Surreal.
was
I
one
like
of
it.
those moments, they sent me a notice saying, "Hey, there's this child," and me being me, the type of line of work I'm in, I was asking 100 questions, and they were like, "Well, we don't have all those answers for you, so you're going to have to like take the leap of faith here," and that was fine with me. The very first thing, and I'll never forget this, I actually ran to Walmart and I was saying to them, I need to figure out what is it that I need to get for an age, 3 child, because at this point I had a teenager. It's been years. It's been a
Yeah.
hot minute. And so I found myself running down the aisles, grabbing everything I could, trying to figure out what kind of snacks these children, would want. And I'll never forget, as I'm in the checkout line, I get the phone call from the social worker, and it's like, "Oh, by the way, they're not potty trained." To run back up the
Get
aisles
a
and
few more
grab
items.
and I was literally on the phone with them. I'm like, "What size diaper? Like, what do I get?" But the one thing I realized is how to be better prepared, right? Because they teach you that in training, and you're just never expecting
Mhm.
that quickness to it, right? By the time I was bringing the bags into the house, they were already pulling up. So it was me panicking, full blown panic. I'm, to be fully transparent, but it was exciting and nerve wracking all at the same time. And for me, it was a very positive experience.
Yeah.
I had a social worker who was very patient, so she
Mhm.
sat there and waited for me to grab these hundreds of bags and such. But I remember when she left, and it was just me and and the child, right? And I
Mhm.
was just kind of sitting there, like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
What do we do, right? But it was a great, to me, it was a challenging but very great situation. One that, not to get into the too much of that background, but one that challenged me significantly. Having a child that didn't verbalize what they were wanting or needing at that time, and a bit unhinged in some ways. The cutest little tornado you could ever meet in your life
Love that
coming through your
description.
house. Yes, exactly. And then ultimately meeting my family, and as everybody was coming home and such. But it was to me one of the experiences I'll never forget was that first placement, and I don't think I'll ever forget that, because you just know that feeling inside you when that happens. So
It's a defining moment. It's interesting
it
as I
is.
listen to you describe it, and of course, fostering it has its differences from being a biological parent. But
Yeah.
that's the way that many of my girlfriends. I don't have children of my own, But
Mhm.
I've heard them describe their first baby of like coming home from the hospital and either their husband was in another room or they were like, oh, so
Mhm.
they're letting me take this baby home from the hospital. Oh, the nurses aren't going to come in. Like it's just me and them. Like this is real.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, I will tell you to me, the training was the most detailed and level setting experience for me.
Hmm.
I remember leaving the training and thinking to myself, wow, we would have all had this training before we had our children. We would have been so, the
Yeah.
stress would have been so much more minimized, right? Especially to your point, coming home from the hospital. But for me, it was also I'm a prepare. I have to always sort of be prepared. And one of the biggest things I had to learn is you could be as prepared as you want to be, but you just never know what's coming your way. Okay, so
Absolutely.
I had to be able to pivot and adjust to that, and that was a big change for me
Yeah.
on a personal level. I was like, okay, well, you know, this plan was great in theory, looks great
Yeah.
on paper, but nope, this is not how it's going to happen today. So, so for me, it was being able to pivot and shift and expecting the unexpected. And
Yeah.
I think I remember hearing that echo in the training,
Yeah.
and they were very honest
Yeah.
about that in the training, and I'm glad they were. I really am. But
Yeah.
that was probably the most positive aspect of that. I think what is something I remember feeling a bit nervous about was the unknown as well. You don't really know their stories. You
Right.
don't really understand, and you won't
Hmm.
upfront about what is their journey,
Yeah.
right? So going into it, I should say, um, there is this myth that we believe, and this is my opinion, that love is enough. You're going to
Hmm.
be able to handle this. You're going to just love, and this is going to fix things.
Right.
And so that is foundational. I definitely know that. It's definitely foundational, but there's so much more to it.
Yes.
And the entire first 3 months, it kind of ignited something in me to more so seek out, more like advocacy, champion, networking, building, connections with other foster parents to understand their journey too. I think if I would have done that early on, it would have
Hmm.
helped me a
Your
bit
journey.
more. Yeah,
Hmm.
I just thought, we all go into this, hey, we can handle anything.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
can handle anything. We've been through so much. No, this was very eye-opening experience, and by the end of that first year, I knew it was the right thing. Like
Yeah.
I knew for me it was the right thing.
Yeah. I love all those points. And I think a lot of us enter a lot of situations, parenting, friendships, relationships, that love is enough.
Yeah.
And love is a very important component. However, to
Mhm.
your point, support, education, advocacy, all of those also play
Mhm.
into. Also, like, because I think a lot of foster parents do enter kind of, I have my list of questions of the things I'm going to ask before I accept a placement. But the reality of
Yeah.
foster care, and I'm sure you can talk to this or speak to this,
Mhm.
is that there's a lot of unknowns. Generally speaking, a lot of
Yeah.
kids have been removed maybe hours before or
Yes.
generally the same day because of the
Mhm.
situation
Mhm.
of neglect or abuse. And there's little known. Only the
Yeah.
immediate information that they could get that made DSS have to take custody. So a lot of
Yeah.
times foster parents are the ones peeling back the layers and discovering it may be the first time
Yeah.
the child has felt safe in quite some time. And they're going to be trusting and, testing.
Mhm.
What would you say to that for foster parents who maybe be struggling with the thoughts of the unknowns with fostering?
Yeah, people should be very going into this, they should be, and this is just my opinion, very much comfortable with what they're willing
Hmm.
to deal with on that day to day. The way I look at things, and maybe this is kind of the background I have in business and having volunteered, you have to be willing to try to
Hmm.
see and feel what is right for you. The most important thing that I found was is everybody on board, right?
Hmm.
Within the family. Because it's not, you can be so passionate about wanting to do this, but everybody else in the household needs to be just as passionate with you because they're in it with you. And
Hmm.
so really sitting down and understanding, what is this going to take, right? And so for me, I think also knowing that there's a bigger picture, right?
Hmm.
I think the bigger picture matters. Sometimes people don't want to necessarily get into the weeds of that. They don't want to know that there's a process, right?
Right.
And so we see this as we're just going to have this child come in. We're going to parent them the way we would parent our own, and we're going to kind of either go toward that reunification or whatever their goals are for themselves. But the unknown comes with the process. And I learned so much about that during this journey for me, because our journey was very unique in that it started as a general, segued into therapeutic. There was tons of involvement by me as a foster parent with those evaluations and therapies and all of it, right? All of these unique people. And the more I got to know about that process, the more comfortable I became. And I had to
Mhm.
be willing to accept it. And
Yeah.
that's something that when I speak with other foster parents about, that's the first thing they ask is like, how do you deal with that? Like, you know, how do you know you can handle this type of, quote unquote situation that child came from? At first, I wasn't sure. And then
Mhm.
I realized, no, I can handle it. I knew what my limitations were as well, but it took time. Like I can't go into this saying, okay, here's my checklist of what
Things
I'm
that
willing to accept and not accept. It was I needed to learn more about what I'm capable of and also my family and what they were able to, accept as well. And I think in having that and a strong network was very, very important, making sure that you have support and reinforcements. And I am very, very fortunate that
I
ironically through my life, most of my friends actually went into fields that are very much aligned to this social work and teaching and therapy. And so I could rely on those resources, right? Or my family members, right? So for me, it was easier as time went on. In the beginning, though, it was a little scary. No one's
Mhm.
gonna, lie and say it's not. Yeah.
There are approximately 11,000 children in North Carolina who need a permanent, safe, and loving home. Can you make a difference? Children's Home Society offers training, resources, and support to help you become a licensed foster parent. Learn more at chsnc.org and start your foster care journey today.
So, Teresa, you shared that you have a son and that
Yeah.
you're a single parent and your son's a teenager currently. And you
Yeah.
also talked about it's important to know your family and talk to your family.
Yeah.
What advice or tips would you give for families that have children already for conversations? Or is there anything that you did that you think helped prepare your son for the foster kids?
Hmm.
It's his journey as well.
Yeah. So my son, I'm his dad and I split, and so he had gone through his own sort of set of traumas. But I had sat him down actually, and I had said, "Listen, this is what I'm learning about." As I
Mhm.
was learning, as I was going through initial trainings, that these are the scenarios that could be coming into our life. And it was, we have a very good communication, he and
Mhm.
I. So, and I'm a single mom. So for me, it's very important that, we express to each other and
Yeah.
communicate with each other about, our comfort and discomfort, etc. And he was very open and he had a lot of questions about, what is expected of me? I'm a
Mhm.
teenager, or will you have time? I
Mm.
play XYZ
Yeah.
sports and will you be able to do that with me? And so he's still a child. At the time, he was a young teen.
Mhm.
And it was fair. It was fair. And then here I was thinking, you know what? I have to make sure I can juggle that too, because the
Yeah.
last thing you want is your own child to feel like they're out of that scenario that you're trying to work through, especially when you have a challenging
Mhm.
situation that you have to run to appointments everywhere, right? So I level set with him early on, and then obviously throughout our duration of the
Checking in.
placement. Yeah,
Yeah.
we have to always check in. And
Yeah.
he's a great big brother. And he never had a younger sibling. So for him, it was unique, but I can tell you from the very beginning, I'd be watching them walk and holding hands, and it was sweet and it was endearing, but it also showed me that he was contributing as well. Like he's learning. And listen, he went through the traumas too of seeing our placement go through that evolution of sorts,
Mhm.
coming into us, undiagnosed at the time, but then going through the motions with us and then living through the moments that were not the most ideal,
Yeah.
right? In the journey. But he would come to me and he
Yeah.
would ask, what is happening right now? Can you
Yeah.
explain to me like what's going on and how do I help you? And that's the type of relationship that we have in general, but that was the most important piece of this, is that he not
Just creating
feel.
that space. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you talked a little bit about or alluded to the fact that you're now a therapeutic foster parent. You started your
Yes.
journey as a traditional foster parent.
Yes.
So talk to us a little bit about that, your transition from traditional foster parenting to being a therapeutic, which would be with kids with a little bit higher level of
Yes.
behavioral or emotional needs. What
Hmm.
does that shift look like for you and your family?
So for us, it was like a natural progression because we were going through the motions of all learning together. I think one of the most critical pieces of that was the team that we had
Mhm.
around us, because I was very new still during that stage and I didn't know what was going on half the time, but we had a very strong team. The reason it felt natural to me is because the engagement from the DSS and CHS and the gal at the table with me, because I felt like I was part of that team. That was very important to be able to
Mhm.
evolve in this space. I learned over time what we were dealing with, right? More of those diagnoses come in. For me, it was more training.
Mhm.
I wanted more training. I sought more training.
Oh, I love that.
And yeah, it's one of those things of even learning, how children, we all have these acronyms applied to all these
Yeah.
children, right? Even my own son, right? ADHD, and so I had to relearn in a lot of ways, different age group, different circumstances, right? So the training and the opportunities to connect and with other foster parents and night, even in those conversational forums, became very critical for me to understand, what do I need to prepare for? It was more time. It was more commuting at times, right? I had to pivot my own career, right? I have a full-time job. And a lot of people ask me that all the time when they are looking at becoming a foster, like, how did you manage all
Manage
that,
all that.
right?
Yeah.
But when you have a therapeutic, there's more to it.
Yes.
And so people, I think, are underestimating the amount of involvement, but you're engaged in it. You're in it with them. I was in that therapy. I was shocked about that. Here I was in play therapy and this kind of therapy, and so I became very invested in that, and also advocating,
Yes.
especially with the schools, like trying to get him the right schools and the right courses and services, et cetera. So for me, it was more just an opportunity to expand my knowledge, but at the same time, it helped me to help the child in the right way, which, I would take a step back, have a bit more sensitivities, maybe change the communication style.
Mm.
We did a lot of creative. I found what his outlets were. They were creative.
Mm.
Music was mine when I was a child going through my own stuff. So I introduced music. It was very funny. He would say to me, because I would sing Disney songs. He didn't know Disney. So I'm singing Disney songs. He's like, "What is this music?" Eventually it transitioned to art and painting.
Okay.
And now, he and I together, we have identified how to incorporate music into emotional expression. So
Mm.
he will hear a song and say, "I love that song for us."
Mm.
And he's very into the lyrics as so we have that connection. And the painting, I'm very much into art. I was looking at becoming an art therapist at one point in my life.
That's
So
super
for
cool.
me, I allow that as well. Colors define feeling for him for quite some time. And so, that's kind of how we kind of approach things and made our way. And we're in a
Yeah.
good place right now.
Yeah.
So
And the little guy that you're fostering currently is how old,
mhm.
Teresa?
He's going to be 6. So
Six.
he's been with me since 3. Yeah,
Right.
3.5.
And I understand you're helping him reunite and going through that
Mm-hmm.
reunification process
Yes.
and engaging in some shared parenting. For
Yes.
our listeners who may not know about shared parenting reunification, anything you'd like to share about those experiences?
Yes. The first thing that I think is important is to go into this with an open mind. No one's no parent is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the first things, I would always bring it back to my grandparents were wonderful, but there was a reason things happened for the way they happened, right? I would have never known, right? So putting that kind of lens onto things and understanding and being empathetic to that bigger picture as well. Yes, you're there for that child, but you have to be receptive and understand that it's not the child also going through these this evolution of sorts, it's also that parent. And so they're given this second chance, right? They're given this chance to come together. And in a lot of ways, you're a tool in the toolbox, right? You're leveraged in such a way that you can have that connection with this other adult and this other parent who at first may hate you because they hated me.
Mhm.
They hated me, right? But at the end, we developed a rapport, which allowed us to communicate together. And while it was a complicated sort of, placement, it was also a pivotal moment when the guard came down.
Yeah.
And so, and you can tell me, I can tell, and I'll never forget. I mean, the biological mother, I mean, she hugged me. She was like, I never really had a friend like
Mhm.
that I can talk to in this way. And this is something that I've needed for a very long time. And I feel like I can say anything to you. And I feel like we could understand my son better because that really was what she needed. And yes, there is that awkwardness. I'm not going to lie. I mean, those out there that are worried about reunification, there is that point in time where you start to feel a bit tension as things move
Mhm.
faster. Is it difficult and emotional? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because especially when, in being in this for reunification, I'm a champion for them, for this to work and for them to move forward. And so there is that thought in my mind is, what happens after, right? That's normal because
Mhm.
we are raising this
It's a roller
child in
coaster.
our home.
Yeah.
Exactly. And now we're about to it's like let the bird fly, spread its wings, right?
Right.
Like mama bird will let the baby bird go. And so there is that emotional side to it that you have to be prepared for as well. And
Mhm.
I'm in that stage, actually.
Mhm.
I am learning. I am learning to again expect the unexpected, right?
Yeah.
It's coming full circle for me. And my hope would be is that at the end of this, regardless of how things end up, my hope is things will go well, and I think they will, in my opinion. But that this little blip in his life, this point in his life, he would have felt like what my dad was saying. I felt secure and safe, loved, and I had a fun childhood as well. Like I had a good childhood as well. And so I know that whatever skills and time we've spent together, I'm confident in some way it's inside here,
Yeah.
his heart. And I know that he'll bring that forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm confident that
Yeah.
it is too. For our listeners, I've had the opportunity to interact with both Teresa, her current foster son, and her biological son. And let me tell you, this little guy that she's fostering is about the cutest little kid I've ever met in life. And I've met a lot of
Yes.
kids, but you can see the bonds and the impact there.
Hmm.
And I know a little bit about his story, and you've hung in there with him and helped him through a
Yeah.
lot of big feelings.
Hmm. I always think back, and let's be honest, right? In the beginning, it was hard. It was
Yes.
real hard, and I almost gave up. And I've actually had, and not gave up, given up in that I didn't want to do this. It was that I didn't think I can do it and I can handle it. And that's what I mentioned earlier is that, expect the unexpected because if you think you can put it in put this in a box structure, it's just not going to be that way. And I know that when I speak to some of the people who are considering becoming foster parents, and some of them know our journey, they know me on
Mm-hmm.
a personal level, right? And they're like, I don't know how you, how you did this, right? But I just refuse to give up. I'm not one that easily gives up, but there is that little hump over the hill. Like you're climbing up that hill and then you
Mm-hmm.
get to the top and then you're like, there's that breaking moment of, oh, this was well worth the blood, sweat, tears type of thing to get up
Yeah.
to that top, at the hill. So I'm glad I stuck with this because he's come so far in
It's
his
very
journey.
true. Yeah.
Yeah, so far. I mean, he's a different child. Yeah.
As you prepare to help him reunify with his biological family, what's your greatest hope for him?
I think for him, it's to be a child, not put the weight of the world on his shoulders. I think that for him, I think it's more enjoying and focusing on the positive, not worrying so much on I hope he can get away from kind of the past, right? Like, some of us we carry things with us. We all have something we carry, right? And he will, obviously. My hope for him is that the bond between him and his mother continues to expand because they have such a unique bond, right? And I really enjoy them.
Yeah.
I enjoy watching them together, but I hope for them that, that continues to build stronger and that he becomes more confident in himself. I've watched him blossom into a child that wants to try it all now.
Hmm.
He's doing skydive. He wants to do skydiving.
Oh,
He's
wow.
all fast and furious. This child's all fast and furious. Okay, so and very different from my biological son, right? So for me, it was more okay. What do I introduce him to? He's not he's not into theater. He's into I want to drive fast cars and jump out of airplanes. So we explored that, and I've watched him gain so much confidence in himself. He recently got his little certificate in skydiving and indoor skydiving, and he worked so hard at that. But he was so proud of himself. And back in the days, he would have been down. He would have been saying, "I can never do this. I can never do this." Very early on, he called me mom, which was very unique for me too. That was a whole other, I wasn't expecting that either. But now we're going through, he says to me, now, like, he understands the difference, right? But, we're going through this phase of he wants that reassurance from others that we're proud of him too, right? So he's
Hmm.
like, Mom, are you proud? I was like, I'm so proud of you, right? Like I
Hmm.
said, you should put it out there. You should tell the world that you do
Oh,
this. And you
bro.
know what? He took it literally, Shannon. He goes out to the store.
I
He
can see
goes
that.
up to people. Yeah, he goes up to people in the aisles. I know how to skydive.
I
So
love
it's
the
very,
confidence, though. You gotta love it.
he's very, very funny. He's very, very funny. But that's what I hope. I hope that continues to build for him and that he continues to know how to communicate and express himself because that's very important
Yeah.
for him as well. Yeah.
And it's cool. I would imagine from your seat, it has to be cool to look at him and see all the growth over the last few years. And there's been a lot. And the fact that Teresa,
Yes.
that you helped, granted, he made the decision to engage in the behaviors to change, but you
Right.
architected a lot of that and gave him the tools as you're talking with us to be able to achieve and be where he is right now.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. But I think also that team that he had,
Mhm.
he was very, very fortunate of having such an amazing invested team.
Yeah.
And it's so important. It's so important. For me, myself, I needed my team. Like I have my social worker at Children's Home Society, but
Mhm.
it was if without them, I don't think I would have I would have been losing it a little bit, but I appreciate those sentiments and sometimes it's also one of those situations where you're not really necessarily recognized there as that participant, right?
Right.
As a foster parent, but we can't be looking for those things. That's not what we're there for. And
Right.
so, the team coming together to me was the most positive aspect of this placement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would assume you would encourage those who are fostering because I think sometimes it's hard. It can be hard to ask for help, or
Yeah.
especially most people who foster are pretty functional adults and
Hmm.
have been successful in different aspects of their life. But I hear you clearly saying, without the help, you don't know that you would be sitting where you are right now with the successes that you and the child that you're fostering have experienced.
One of the biggest misconceptions, I literally had this conversation yesterday with somebody else. We go into this like, respite, right? No one
Hmm.
wants to ask for it. I'm like, why aren't we, in the beginning, here I am now.
Hmm.
I say, why is no one asking? We need to, take care of ourselves too,
Hmm.
because people would always say that during the training. I'd be like, oh, what are you going to do? I don't really do anything for myself as it is in my general day to day, right? No, one of the most crucial, in my opinion, parts is asking for the help,
Yeah.
having the network, being okay that you're asking. Because I think what we all think is, and I thought this myself, I'll be transparent. I thought if I ask for this, they will feel like I can't do this.
Mm.
And so in my mind, I tried to do it all on my own, thinking
Yeah.
I can handle it all, but I learned that it was okay to ask. It was okay to lean on each other as a
Yeah.
network, especially our fosters. And they're all over different, some go direct with DSS, some go through other agencies. We're all one big network
Yeah.
of mothers and teachers and fosters, et cetera. And we just learn from each other. And saying that I need to take a minute is
Mhm.
okay in that world. And of course, doing it the right way, doing it the right way, right? But asking for the respite was important for me. Going to the events was important for me.
Mhm. And
Being
connecting with
able
the
to
family. Yeah.
commingle. Exactly, right? Like connect with people that really understand what you're going through.
Yeah.
and really understanding their stories and them understanding mine. And actually, at that picnic you mentioned, we met a family that always tends to be in court at the same time as us. We never knew. We
Ah,
literally are participating at the same time, and they've been following my journey. And ironically, I would be hearing theirs, and we just never knew. And here we were sitting together, and we had the greatest conversation.
uh-huh.
It was wonderful. But yes, absolutely. I mean, having resources as well, identifying the resources and sharing the resources, and that's something that I'm finding I do more and more. Like we have a lot of resources where we, the county that we live, and some of us don't even realize how much is out there. Like we're afraid to tap into it. I don't know why, but I've changed my approach, and I know going into my next placement, I absolutely will leverage it in a very different way, and I'm not going to go about this the same way, and be okay with that.
Yeah.
We're not all perfect. So,
Yeah.
in my mind, I thought I could do it all.
We all do, right?
I know.
What's that?
I know.
But yeah, it's naturally evolved. I love that. And that you've shared that with our listeners. Anything else as we kind of wrap up here, Teresa, that you would like to share with anyone who's listening who maybe is currently fostering and maybe they're struggling a little bit or someone considering it? Any words of wisdom that you'd like to leave with them?
I think if they're on the fence and they're saying, "Oh, I don't know if I'm ready," you're never going to be ready. You're never going to be 100% ready. So
Mhm.
stop with that. Stop with that saying, because I did the same thing. I was like, I don't know if I'm ready. No, you're not going to be ready. You have to be ready and willing. If this is
Mhm.
what you want to do, and you feel that this is a calling for you, do it. You know, and be okay with the unexpected. And you don't have to know all the answers either.
Mhm.
I mean, this is the other piece of this is, just trust yourself. You know within yourself if this is what you want to do. And I think give it a try. I mean, even if it's, from a respite perspective, try it, and see. But I find that I didn't need that. I went right in and, jumped 2 feet in, and this was the right thing for me. So I'm glad I did that. I'm glad I took the risk.
I'm glad that you took the risk too, Teresa. Thank you for being a part of the CHS family. Thank you for joining us
Thank
today and
you.
for letting us have a look inside of your life, real and
Thank
unfiltered.
you. No, absolutely. Thank you. And I love it. I love being a part of the group. And I'm looking forward to many, many more years, hopefully, together. So
Thank you, Teresa. And to our
thank you.
listeners, we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for joining us on In Real Life Foster Care Unfiltered. If you're interested in becoming a foster parent or supporting children in foster care, visit chsnc.org to learn more. And if you're a current or former foster parent with a story to share, email us at inreallifepodcast@chsnc.org.